Hello, my name is Charlotte Rogers, and I'm about to tell you about a time when I almost died, and Jesus showed me the real reason why the chosen ones are having money problems. Early in the morning on February 2nd, 2024, at 2:45 a.m., I died during surgery that should have been normal. I've been waiting almost 2 years to share this story because I wanted to make sure I could explain every detail clearly. These feelings are still making me shake because of how heavy what was told to me is. But Jesus made it clear that time is running out and that this word needs to get to his people, especially those who are wondering why they always have money problems even though they are good. But first, let me know where you are listening. Even though we're not together, it will be nice to feel closer. Don't forget to mark this story as liked and share your thoughts on what you thought about it. Let's talk about this in an honest way so we can all learn from each other. Have fun listening. I worked as a pediatric nurse at Minneapolis Children's Hospital and was 41 years old when it happened. I had been a Christian since I was a child. I grew up in a Christian home where we were told to always trust God. But as a single mom with 2 kids, I had been having a hard time with money for years, even though I was religious, tithed regularly, and tried to live a good life. My husband had left us 3 years before, leaving me with a lot of debt and what felt like constant financial stress. Doctors said that person had a painful appendicitis that February night. The pain had been getting worse all day at work, but I didn't pay attention to it. This is something that many nurses do. When I finally accepted I needed help, my appendix had already burst, giving me a very bad infection that was spreading all over my body. Before the surgery, the last thing I remember is asking, "Lord, please watch over my children." A simple prayer led to the most meaningful experience of my life. I had no idea it would. The next thing that happened is impossible to fully describe in words, but I've been told to try. When my heart stopped beating on that surgery table, I felt like I was physically pulling away from my body. It wasn't scary or painful. Instead, it felt like being slowly pulled out of a pool of water. Along with the monitor's loud beeping, I could see the medical team working hard below. But I felt completely calm. The light then came on. It seems rude to call it just light, though. It was love that was alive, pure truth, and more real than anything I had ever felt in my body. I became aware of every moment I'd ever lived and every choice I'd ever made as I was drawn toward it. They were all happening at the same time in what I can only call perpetual now. That's when I heard my name being said with so much love that it changed the way I felt. Stacy. I turned, but I wasn't turning with a body, and Jesus Christ was there. To be clear, this wasn't the Jesus from Sunday school pictures or movies. His presence was both overwhelming and deeply reassuring at the same time. Even though his eyes were full of more knowledge than the universe itself, they looked at me with such love that I felt like they knew me and accepted me totally. The scars on his hands seemed to shine with a light that told the story of all. Salvation at once. He told her, "My daughter, I brought you here because you, like many of my chosen ones, have been wondering why you have such constant money problems while others seem to have it all together. You will understand today." The space around us changed when these words were said. Everything changed at once, and I felt like I was in a place where time and infinity met, and spiritual truths became real. Jesus started to show me things about money problems that would change the way I thought about them forever, and I hope they will change the way you think about them too. "Watch," he said, pointing to what looked like real scenes happening in front of us. "I will show you why it is common for my chosen ones to have hard times with money." The next thing he said was so deep and thorough that I have to share it carefully and fully. As I learned more truths, they added up to a tapestry of divine knowledge that finally answered the questions that had been bothering me and many of you for years. Jesus showed me my first scene, and it was both beautiful and sad. I saw a lot of Christians, people I knew to be true followers of Christ, pleading with God for money while they were on their knees. Tears were running down their faces. They had a lot of bills, almost no money in the bank, and a sad heart from always not having enough. Jesus told them, "Pay close attention, because I'm going to show you what's really going on in the spiritual world when my chosen ones are having money problems." All of a sudden, I could see both the physical and spiritual worlds at the same time. I saw what looked like a shield of light above each battling believer. Jesus told them, This shield, which looks like a limit on their money, is actually there to protect me. A lot of my kids pray for wealth, but they don't know that getting rich too soon would destroy their lives. He waved his hand, and I saw different timelines and possible futures that might have happened if these believers had gotten the money they were asking for. The scenes were very sad. I saw humble servants of God become proud and self-reliant when they suddenly got rich. These people stopped praying and serving God and finally gave up on their divine missions completely. Jesus told Charlotte, "Some of my most precious children curse the very thing that keeps them safe. They don't understand that I'm keeping them safe from harm." He taught me that having a lot of money can make it hard for people to connect with God. I saw believers who had been faithful in the past get cash breakthroughs they weren't spiritually ready for. Their prayers got shorter, they went to church less often, and as time went on, their hearts hardened as they started to depend on their bank accounts instead of God's support. Jesus said, "This is why I let many of my chosen ones go through times when they can't pay their bills. It's not punishment, it's to keep them safe and get them ready." He then showed me something that shocked me. He told them about the spiritual war that was going on in the unseen world. I saw evil forces specifically launching financial strikes against God's chosen ones. These demons knew exactly who had God's anointing, so they set up cash problems to try to stop them and beat them. Jesus said, "The enemy knows who carries my greatest tasks." Wars over money are often a sign of something sacred. A lot of my kids don't understand that their money problems are actually signs that they are on the right path. Then Jesus led me through scene after scene, each one showing me a different reason why chosen ones have money problems. He showed me how having money problems takes away false protection and forces you to depend on God alone. I realized that every unpaid bill and money problem was actually a chance for God to show how faithful He is. Do you remember the Israelites who lived in the desert? Jesus asked, "I gave you manna every day, not once a year." This wasn't because I didn't have enough money to last a year. It was because I wanted them to learn how to count on me every day. This very moment, many of my kids are in the woods, learning the same thing. Then Jesus showed me something that made me fall to my knees, even though I wasn't in my body. He talked about how having money problems can keep us from getting into bad relationships or taking advantage of bad opportunities that would get in the way of our divine purpose. He showed me my own life and said, "Look at this. I saw business chances that I had been upset to miss because I didn't have the money to spend." God then showed me that those chances would have taken me away from my true calling. I thought God was keeping something back, but it was really Him protecting me. Jesus put His hand on my shoulder and said, "Daughter, your poverty is short-term, but its purpose is eternal. I'm not hurting you. I'm getting you ready. You are learning lessons that will help you carry out your kingdom task every time you have to trust me to pay your bills or give you food." Then He showed me how money problems are like a refiner's fire. They burn away the bad parts of our character that would make us unfit for our holy purpose. I saw how times of lack show us our real intentions, our hidden idols, and how faithful we are. Jesus said that many people ask for wealth, but they don't realize that character comes before wealth. I'm not going to give away money that would hurt my kids' souls. Then Jesus showed me something that shocked me: the spiritual power of being happy even when things are bad. I saw that Christians who stay joyful and trust in God even when they are having a hard time with money are actually building up spiritual wealth that is much more important than material wealth. Jesus told me to pay close attention as He showed me pictures of Christians who were poor in material things but rich in spirit. Their faith was strong, their prayers were powerful, and they had a huge effect on other people. Jesus said, "These are my real pioneers of prosperity. They've learned to be happy no matter what, which in my world makes them impossible to stop." Then Jesus showed me something that made me cry, because it made me understand how money problems can affect more than one generation. I saw whole family trees going back through time in what seemed like an instant, including my own. Jesus told them to look closely. A lot of the people I've picked are chosen to break generational cycles. I saw right in front of my eyes how patterns of poverty, lack, and bad money management had been passed down from generation to generation like dark spiritual inheritances. But then I saw something beautiful: how God places some Christians in a way that breaks these cycles. Jesus told them, You are not just struggling for yourself. You are in a fight for the sake of your children, grandkids, and future generations. I'm setting up new patterns of spiritual honesty and financial knowledge through you that will be good for your children and grandchildren. He showed me that my own money problems were actually breaking chains that had been passed down through generations in my family. I saw how my grandfather's gambling problem and my dad's constant debt affected my family spiritually. And then I saw how my struggles with money and faith were actually changing my family's spiritual DNA. Jesus told them, "This is why the enemy is working so hard to stop you from making money. He knows that these chains will never be the same again once they are broken." Then Jesus showed me something that shocked me: how divine timing can lead to financial freedom. It was clear to me that God's timing was right for more than just my life. He was planning things that I couldn't even begin to understand, like a great chess player. Jesus said, "Many of my children pray for immediate breakthrough, but they don't realize that if they get it too soon, it will stop the bigger plan I have for them." Pay attention. He showed me examples of followers who had lied to get money by resorting to desperate measures like high-interest loans, shady business deals, or giving up their morals. The results were terrible. What looked like answers to their prayers turned out to be traps that kept them stuck in loops of stronger bonds. Jesus said, "My timing is perfect." I'm not only thinking about what you need right now, I'm thinking about your ultimate fate and the fates of those who are linked to you. After that, Jesus said something that made everything make sense. He taught me that having money problems can keep us from wanting things too soon. There were believers I saw who were so eager for a breakthrough that they would have done things that would have ruined their divine missions if they had been able to. Christ told Stacy that some of my children aren't rich yet because they want to build their own countries instead of mine. I'm waiting until they give up everything in their hearts. Then he showed me times in my own life when I had prayed very hard for money to come through. I could see very clearly how getting those breakthroughs would have caused me to miss important divine meetings and spiritual growth chances that were necessary for my calling. Jesus made it clear that your problems are not punishments. They are training for a level of power and duty that can only be handled by people who are spiritually mature. Then Jesus taught me something new about spiritual battle that I didn't know before. He showed me how the enemy especially attacks believers with money when they have important jobs for the kingdom. He told them to pay close attention because scenes in the spiritual realm would be shown. I saw demons purposely getting in the way of believers' finances just as they were about to take advantage of powerful ministry opportunities. These attacks weren't just random. They were planned to stop and discourage God's chosen ones. Jesus said, "But here's what my children miss most of the time. These acts actually prove that they are who they say they are. It doesn't make sense for the enemy to fight people who aren't a threat to his country." Then Jesus showed me how money problems can be a holy filter that shows who loves God for who he is and not for what he can give them. I saw Christians being put to the test to see if their faith was real. Jesus said, "Many say they love me, but their love is for what I can give them, not for being with me." Problems with money show what's really going on in their lives. After that, he showed me something that made everything very clear: how being limited by money can keep us dependent on God. After getting financial breakthroughs, I saw Christians who stopped praying and asking God for help and started relying on their own knowledge and resources. Jesus explained, "This is why I often hold back wealth. Being independent would destroy my children more than having them rely on me." As these revelations went on, Jesus showed me something that literally took my breath away: the direct link between having money problems and having spiritual power. In a spiritual sense, I could see how each financial fight I won through faith was actually making my spiritual strength and authority stronger. Jesus said that my chosen ones often think about what they don't have and miss what they are getting. Pay close attention to this. He showed me followers who stayed true to themselves even when they were having a hard time with money. They looked like they were having a hard time in the physical world, but I could see them building up what looked like glowing deposits of spiritual power in the spiritual world. Every bill paid by faith, every act of kindness despite not having enough, and every moment of choosing happiness in hard times was building something that will last forever. Jesus said, "This is why I let many of my chosen ones go through long periods of financial testing." Aside from learning about money, they are also learning how to have mental power without being harmed by it. After that, Jesus told me something that changed the way I thought about money problems. He showed me how God often limits people's money as a way to keep his chosen ones in the right place for their divine purpose. Jesus told me, "Watch what happens when I let go of wealth too soon." He then showed me scenes that broke my heart. After getting rich, I saw Christians who either left their assigned territories or quit their ministry jobs right away, or they became so focused on keeping their money that they missed all of God's meetings. Jesus said that what seems like financial slavery is sometimes just his way of making sure that his children are perfectly set up for their purpose. Then he showed me how having trouble with money can be a great way to give a strong testimony. I saw Christians who, after going through and getting through times of lack, had a spiritual authority that no amount of theological study could give them when they taught others about faith and provision. Jesus made it clear that your problems aren't just yours. They're about the thousands of people who will be inspired and taught by your story of overcoming. I was amazed when Jesus told me something about spiritual growth. I learned from him that money problems can be spiritually nurturing, making a space where deep spiritual roots can grow. Jesus said, "Many of my children pray for financial breakthroughs, but they don't realize that their current struggles are actually giving them the spiritual depth they will need for their future jobs." I watched as he showed me Christians who were growing in their faith, perseverance, and spiritual power in ways that would have been impossible to achieve when they were rich and comfortable. Jesus said, "This is why I often put off financial breakthroughs. I'm not hide anything from my kids. I'm putting money into their mental growth." Then Jesus taught me something about God's safety that made me cry with thanksgiving. He talked about how money problems can be a protective wall that keeps Christians from relationships, chances, and paths that would destroy their divine destiny. He showed me my own life again and said, "Look carefully." I saw business opportunities that I had been heartbroken to miss, relationships that had ended because I couldn't afford them, and dreams I hadn't been able to follow because I didn't have enough money. Then Jesus showed me how each of these chances I missed would have taken me away from my true calling. Jesus told them that what they thought was me holding back was actually me protecting them. I loved you too much to let early success throw you off track. Then he told me something about spiritual combat that changed the way I thought about battles over money. I saw how the enemy often goes after the money of Christians because it's one of the best ways to get their attention off of God's plan. Jesus said that the enemy knows that if he can keep my children focused on staying alive, they won't have much energy left for their kingdom work. What will happen, though, when my kids learn to grow emotionally, even when they don't have much? He showed me Christians who had learned to stay happy, peaceful, and spiritually focused, even when they were having trouble with money. Demons were afraid of these people because they were spiritually powerful. Jesus said, "This is why I let some of my chosen ones go through long periods of financial testing. In spite of their problems, they are learning how to be spiritually strong." Then, Jesus said something about God's time that made everything abundantly clear. He showed me how the right time for God to make a cash breakthrough is closely linked to spiritual growth and God's plan. Jesus said, "Many of my children are not ready for the level of influence that having a lot of money would bring them. I'm keeping them from being exposed too soon." I watched as he showed me believers who had big breaks in their finances at just the right time. When their character had grown enough, their spiritual roots were strong, and they gave their hearts completely to God's plan. "This is why I often hold up money releases," Jesus said. "I'm waiting for my kids to be spiritually grown enough to handle both the good things and the duties that come with having a lot. I spent more time in the sacred realm, and Jesus helped me understand deeper facts about his chosen one's money problems. He took my hand and said, 'Come, there are more news you need to bring back.' Jesus showed me how he uses not having enough money to teach true peace, which is what Paul wrote about in Philippians 4:12-13. I saw Christians who had learned to find their joy in Christ instead of their circumstances. These were people who could honestly say they were happy whether they had a lot or nothing. Jesus told them that in your world, people try to find happiness by getting more money, more stuff, and more fame. But look what happens when my kids learn to be happy with just me. People who seemed to have an ethereal peace about them, even though they didn't have any money, showed up in front of my eyes. Their happiness wasn't based on material things. It came from a close relationship with Christ that went beyond their money. Jesus told them these people have found a secret. When they found happiness in me, they found real freedom, the kind of freedom that money could never buy. Then Jesus told me something about being out of sync with his time that helped me understand my own problems. He said that many of my children aren't coming up with big money ideas yet because they're not on track with my divine schedule. Pay attention. I saw Christians frantically trying to get financial chances by slamming doors, making connections, and changing situations, all while God was planning something much more beautiful that would take time. I remember you that Ecclesiastes 3:11 says that I make everything beautiful at the right time. Some of my kids are broke not because I'm not giving them enough, but because they're expecting me to give them everything at the right time. He showed me that God often works behind the scenes, setting up situations, people, and chances so that they come together at just the right time, not a second too early or late. Jesus made it clear that the suffering is not a punishment. It's getting ready for a gift that will come at just the right time. Jesus then pointed out another important truth. Money problems often show that God's resources were not used properly in the past. He said that some of my kids are lacking because they haven't learned how to handle the things I've already given them well. I saw scenes of Christians who had been given money in the past but wasted it by spending it on things they didn't need, not saving, or not listening to God's advice about how to give and invest. Jesus said that Luke 16:10 is full of deep wisdom. You can trust someone with a lot if you trust them with very little. Some of my kids are having money problems because I'm showing them how to be good stewards with small amounts of money before I give them bigger amounts. I saw how God uses these times to change our spending habits, start fresh with our finances, and give us the knowledge we'll need to handle future blessings. After Jesus told them something about the kingdom's goal, everything fell into place. He showed me believers whose holy callings meant they had to be poor for a while. Jesus told me to pay close attention to this as he showed me men and women who were called to work in ministries, missions, or community projects that didn't bring in money right away. Jesus said, "These chosen ones often wonder why they have trouble doing my will. They don't understand that this short period of restriction is not meant as punishment, but as training for a bigger task." I saw how these believers were forced to develop supernatural faith, creativity, and resilience during times when money was tight. These traits would become important for their kingdom tasks. Jesus told me that their suffering would end. It's intentional training for a calling that needs spiritual growth that can only be achieved through tests. Then Jesus told me the most important truth about money problems. They are meant to make us more spiritual. 6th and 7th verses of 1 Peter 1 talk about how difficulties make faith more valuable than gold. Having trouble with money is often that purifying fire. Believers going through hard times with grace and hope were right in front of my eyes. I could see in the spiritual world that each financial problem was burning away impurities like pride, self-reliance, materialism, and worldly desire, leaving behind a pure faith that was worth a lot. Jesus made it clear that this polishing is not a punishment. It's preparation for a weight of glory that will last forever and is much greater than any short-term cash help I could give. Jesus put his hands on my shoulders as our time together was coming to an end. He told Charlotte, "You must go back and tell these truths. My kids are going through unnecessary pain because they don't see the point of their money problems." I could feel tears running down my spiritual face. I whispered to God, "Will I remember everything well enough?" Christ smiled. "I will help you remember everything you need to remember right when you need it. Let my people know that their money problems aren't punishments, but rather safeguards, training, and cleansing for purposes bigger than they can think." When they said those words, I felt like I was being pulled back to my body. Before I went back, the last thing I heard was Jesus saying, "Tell them I have not forgotten them. Tell them that their big break is coming at just the right time." They were shocked when I woke up in the recovery room. My medical papers showed that I had been dead for 9 minutes and 12 seconds. The doctors were amazed at how well I had recovered, because they saw no signs of the brain damage they were afraid of. But I knew it wasn't just a miracle in medicine. It was God's will for me to share these facts about why God's chosen people often have money problems. These words aren't meant to downplay the real pain of not having enough money. It's meant to give that pain a divine meaning instead. Know this: God hasn't forgotten about you if you're having money problems despite being faithful. He's getting you ready. He's looking out for you. He is cleansing you for a reason that is much bigger than your short-term happiness. Your big break will happen when He says it will, not when you say it will. You'll understand why you had to. Wait when it finally comes. Until then, be happy in Christ, be good with what you have, believe His timing, and remember that the hard times you're going through now are making you stronger in ways that thieves and rust can't destroy. Thank you for your story. It has helped me feel calm and peaceful. My cash situation hasn't magically improved overnight, but the way I see things has changed forever. I no longer see my problems as punishments. Instead, I see them as training for a divine plan that will come together in God's right time.